It is 8:52 in the evening on July 11th, 2015. Inside the Altiplano Federal Prison, Mexico's most secure, most fortified, most technologically advanced maximum security facility, the guards begin their routine check of Cell 20. The cell is empty. The most dangerous drug lord on the planet, a man the United States government had spent years hunting, a man 2 countries had imprisoned, a man who once ran a criminal empire worth billions of dollars, is gone. Not transferred, not released, gone. And the only thing left behind is a hole in the floor, barely large enough for a man to crawl through, covered by a small shower area that the cameras could not fully see. In the next few minutes, Mexican officials will begin to understand something that will embarrass their government, humiliate their prison system, and shock the entire world. Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Loera, known to the world as El Chapo, the Shorty, has escaped from maximum security prison for the second time in his life. But this escape is different. This one involves a tunnel that stretches more than 1 mile underground. A tunnel with electricity, with ventilation, with a rail system built to carry a man on a modified motorcycle through the dark earth beneath the feet of prison guards. This was not an accident. This was not a lucky moment. This was an operation that took months, possibly over a year, to plan and execute. An operation that required engineers, construction workers, tunneling experts, and people on the inside. The question that investigators, journalists, and governments will spend years trying to answer is not simply how El Chapo escaped. The question is how no one stopped him. But to understand the escape, you must first understand the man. And to understand the man, you must go back to the beginning, to the mountains of Sinaloa, to a dirt floor home where a boy grew up watching poverty and learning that the only way out was through the trade that surrounded everything. Joaquin Guzman was born on April 4, 1957, in La Tuna, a tiny village in the mountains of Badiraguato in the state of Sinaloa. The mountains of Sinaloa are not like other mountains. They are remote, they are rugged. They are the kind of terrain that makes a man either surrender or adapt. Guzman adapted. His father, Emilio Guzman Bustillos, was a small-time opium grower. In that region, in that era, that was not unusual. The poppy fields of the Sierra Madre had been feeding the drug trade for generations. Young Joaquin did not grow up dreaming of power. He grew up understanding survival. He dropped out of school before finishing 3rd grade. He began working for the local drug trade as a teenager, running errands, carrying messages, learning how things moved, how money flowed, and how power was earned. By the time he was in his mid-20s, Guzman had caught the attention of Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, known as El Padrino, the Godfather. Felix Gallardo ran the Guadalajara cartel and was at the time the most powerful drug trafficker in Mexico. He saw something in the young man from the mountains. He gave Guzman logistics responsibilities, moving product, managing routes. Guzman was good at it. He was exceptionally good at it. What set him apart was not violence alone, though he was not a man who shied away from it. What set him apart was his operational mind, his ability to think in systems, his ability to build infrastructure where others saw only obstacles. He began using tunnels. This is a detail that matters. Long before the escape tunnel at Altiplano, long before the world came to understand what El Chapo was capable of building underground, Guzman had already begun mastering this particular art. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, as he rose inside the Sinaloa Cartel, which emerged after Felix Gallardo's arrest in 1989, Guzman began constructing tunnels beneath the US-Mexico border to move cocaine in volumes that simply could not be explained by traditional smuggling methods. The first major tunnel his organization used ran from a warehouse in Douglas, Arizona, to a house in Agua Prieta, Sonora. It was discovered in 1990. By then, the drugs were already gone. But the real story was only beginning. By the early 1990s, Guzman was one of the most wanted men in Mexico. The United States had placed him on its radar. He was operating with a level of boldness that alarmed even experienced law enforcement officials. Then came June 3, 1993. At the Guadalajara International Airport, a gunfight erupted between Guzman's men and a hitman of the Arellano Felix brothers, rivals from the Tijuana Cartel. In the crossfire, a bullet killed Cardinal Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo, a Catholic cardinal, shot dead at an airport in broad daylight. Mexico could not ignore this. The pressure from the church, from the public, from the United States was enormous. Guzman fled to Guatemala. He was captured just weeks later, on June 9, 1993, in Tapachula. He was extradited back to Mexico. He was tried, convicted, and sentenced to over 20 years in prison. He was taken to Puente Grande Federal Prison, a maximum security facility in Jalisco State. And then, on January 19, 2001, he escaped. The method was almost embarrassingly simple. He was wheeled out in a laundry cart. Some accounts say he walked out with guards who had been bribed. The full truth has never been officially confirmed, but the outcome was undeniable. El Chapo was gone. He remained free for 13 years. During those 13 years, he built the Sinaloa Cartel into the largest and most powerful drug trafficking organization in the history of the Western Hemisphere. Forbes magazine listed him among the world's most powerful people. His personal fortune was estimated at over $1 billion. His organization moved cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana across borders with an efficiency that rivaled legitimate logistics companies. He became, in the words of one DEA official, not just a criminal, he became a system. And then on February 22, 2014, in a high-rise condominium in the beach resort city of Mazatlan, Mexican Marines broke down a door and arrested him again. This time, the world watched closely. This time, the Mexican government made promises. This time, they said, would be different. He was taken to El Altiplano, the Centro Federal de Readaptación Social No. 1, located in Almoloya de Juarez in the state of Mexico. This was Mexico's equivalent of a supermax prison, built specifically to hold the most dangerous, most resourceful criminals the country had ever seen. The facility had 24-hour surveillance, sensors in the floors, multiple guard rotations, jamming devices to block communications. The guards were changed regularly to prevent relationships with prisoners. Guzman was watched constantly. He was held in cell 20. The cell had a shower area. It was a small detail, an ordinary architectural feature. It would become the most significant detail in the entire story. What investigators would later piece together is a timeline that begins almost immediately after El Chapo's arrival at Altiplano in 2014. Within weeks, perhaps within days, planning had begun. The location chosen for the tunnel's exit point was a partially built house on a property roughly 1.5 kilometers from the prison. The house was under construction. Nobody questioned it. Neighbors saw workers. They saw equipment. They saw the ordinary business of a construction site. What they did not see was that the workers were digging down, and then they were digging sideways. The tunnel that would eventually be discovered by authorities was an engineering achievement that defied easy explanation. It was 1.7 kilometers long, just over 1 mile. It was approximately 1.7 meters tall in most sections, meaning a man could stand almost upright. It was reinforced with wooden beams. It had a ventilation system with PVC pipes that pushed fresh air through the tunnel. It had lighting, actual electric lights installed at intervals along the entire length. And it had a rail system, a modified motorcycle mounted on rails, equipped with a wooden platform on the back, capable of carrying a man lying flat, moving him quickly through the earth, from the exit house to the point directly beneath the prison's cell 20. This was not a crude hole. This was not desperation. This was precision engineering. Experts who later studied the tunnel estimated it required between 1 and 2 years to complete. It required professional tunnel engineers, possibly people with mining or construction backgrounds. It required significant capital investment. Estimates ranged from $1 to $5 million for the construction alone. It required materials, steel beams, rail tracks, electrical cabling, ventilation components. All of this was sourced, purchased, transported to the site, and installed without alerting Mexican authorities. How? This is where the investigation becomes deeply uncomfortable for the Mexican government. The escape happened on the evening of July 11, 2015. Security camera footage inside the prison shows Guzman walking toward the shower area of his cell. He bends down. He does not reappear. The cameras could not see beneath the shower floor. Investigators believe a tile or panel had been cut and replaced over a period of time. Each cut, each removed piece, each small modification made during a window when camera angles were obstructed or guards were occupied. The work inside the cell was likely done over many nights, in small increments. Tools possibly passed through during visits or smuggled in other ways. At some point, and officials still do not have the precise answer, a connection was made between the tunnel coming from outside and the work being done inside the cell. When the moment arrived, Guzman descended into the tunnel. He traveled through over a mile of underground passage. He emerged inside the construction house. From there, accounts suggest vehicles were waiting. He was moved quickly. He was gone before any alarm was raised. The prison discovered he was missing when guards conducted a routine check. It had been nearly 90 minutes since he was last confirmed in the cell. Those 90 minutes were enough. By the time Mexican authorities activated emergency protocols, El Chapo was deep in the Mexican countryside with people who had been planning his extraction for over a year. He had vanished back into the mountains that had always protected him. But what happened next shocked everyone, because this time, the world did not simply accept the narrative. The escape triggered a political earthquake in Mexico. President Enrique Peña Nieto was abroad on a state visit. He returned immediately. The director of the federal prison system resigned. Officials scrambled to explain how a man under 24-hour surveillance in a country's highest security prison had simply ceased to exist. The United States government reacted with barely concealed fury. American officials had long pushed Mexico to extradite Guzman. Mexico had consistently refused, insisting its own legal system was sufficient. Just weeks before the escape, a Mexican judge had issued a temporary injunction that appeared to delay any possible extradition to the United States. The timing appeared to many observers as something more than coincidence. The question investigators began asking out loud, and that journalists and commentators were asking even more loudly, was whether El Chapo had received help from inside the system. Not just construction workers, not just engineers. Inside the prison itself, the shower area in cell 20 had limited camera coverage. Someone had to know that. Someone had to have provided information about the cell layout, the camera angles, the guard schedules, the moments when movement inside the cell would not be fully observed. Mexico's Attorney General opened an investigation. Several prison officials and guards were arrested. But the full scope of any inside cooperation was never definitively established in public proceedings. What was established, very clearly, is that the Sinaloa Cartel had the reach, the resources, and the intelligence to penetrate one of the country's most secure facilities. This was not an escape. El Chapo spent 6 months as a fugitive. 6 months in which the manhunt was described as the largest in Mexican history. Military operations in Sinaloa, raids on properties connected to the cartel, informant networks activated, intelligence gathering coordinated with the United States and other partners. He was reportedly hiding in the Sinaloa Mountains. the same terrain where he grew up, the terrain he knew better than any government agent hunting him, the terrain that had protected drug traffickers for generations. But something changed in early 2016. In October 2015, Guzman had made a decision that would contribute directly to his capture. He agreed to participate in a meeting with the Mexican actor Sean Penn and the actress Kate Del Castillo, who was developing a film project about his life. The meeting, which took place at a remote jumbo location in the state of Durango, was documented and later published by Rolling Stone magazine in January 2016. The article was extraordinary. The circumstances were extraordinary. But what mattered most to investigators was not the words on the page, it was the trail. The logistics of arranging and traveling to that meeting left digital and physical traces. The cartel's communications in organizing the encounter, the movement of people connected to the project. These created threads for investigators to pull. On January 8, 2016, less than a week after the Rolling Stone article was published, Mexican Marines stormed a house in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. There was a gunfight. 5 cartel members were killed. 1 Marine was wounded. El Chapo ran through a sewer tunnel. He was captured hours later on a highway outside the city. Tired, dirty, unarmed. He was arrested. He was photographed. The images went around the world. This time, Mexico did not try to hold him indefinitely. Under enormous political pressure, facing the undeniable reality that their prison system had failed twice, Mexican authorities moved forward with extradition proceedings. On January 19, 2017, exactly 16 years to the day after his first escape from Puente Grande, Joaquin Guzman was extradited to the United States. He was flown to New York. He was placed in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. He was, for the first time, subject to the jurisdiction and custody of the United States federal system. In November 2018, his trial began in a Brooklyn federal courtroom. It was one of the most dramatic criminal trials in American legal history. Witnesses described murders, bribery, kidnappings, and a drug operation of almost incomprehensible scale. One witness testified that Guzman had bribed the former Mexican president, though this claim was disputed and never proven in court. On February 12, 2019, after a trial lasting 3 months, a jury convicted El Chapo on all 10 counts. In July of that year, he was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years and ordered to forfeit more than $12 billion. He was transferred to the ADX Florence facility in Colorado, the most secure prison in the United States, a place sometimes called the Alcatraz of the Rockies, a place where inmates spend up to 23 hours a day in solitary confinement, a place where no prisoner has ever escaped. The story of El Chapo's escape from Altiplano is more than the story of one man's audacity. It is the story of what happens when criminal power reaches a scale that challenges the functions of government itself. When an organization has enough money, enough reach, enough human intelligence inside public institutions, the ordinary mechanisms of state authority begin to fail. The tunnel beneath Altiplano was not just an engineering project, it was a message. It said that borders, walls, locks, and cameras are only as strong as the people paid to maintain them. It said that in a country where a prison guard earns a modest salary, and a cartel can offer 10 years of that salary for a single act of cooperation, the mathematics of loyalty become dangerously complicated. The escape also raised questions that extended far beyond Mexico, about how criminal organizations use corruption as infrastructure, about how they think in long timelines when governments think in election cycles, about how they invest in patience the way legitimate businesses invest in capital. El Chapo did not escape because he was lucky. He escaped because his organization had spent over a year making sure luck was not required. He sits today in a cell in Colorado, in a facility designed to make escape not merely difficult, but functionally impossible. He is in his late 60s. His appeals have been denied. His legal team continues to fight, but the walls around him are not the walls of Altiplano. The Sinaloa Cartel continues to operate. The organization he built did not collapse when he was captured. It adapted. It diversified. New leaders emerged. The trade continued. This is perhaps the most important thing to understand about the entire story. El Chapo was never just a man. He was a structure, a network, a system. And systems do not disappear when one person is removed. The tunnels are still being discovered beneath the US-Mexico border. The drugs continue to move. The money continues to flow. And somewhere, in the mountains of Sinaloa, in the villages where young men grow up watching poverty and learning that the only way out is through the trade that surrounds everything, the story is beginning again. For someone, because it always does.